Good morning again, everyone. This is Patrick Halstead at Qdabra Software, and I'm happy to have you here for our weekly webinar. We try to do these webinars every week on Thursday morning. They're short, hopefully give you some ideas for how to improve your SharePoint forms. And today we're talking, I am recording by the way, and I believe that you can hear me just fine. If you can't, please use the question comment control in GoToWebinar to let me know that, but I think I'm coming through loud and clear. And I'm recording, like I said, we'll put these on YouTube afterwards. Today we're talking about how to make forms look good on mobile devices, and we have lots of customers that use their phones and their tablets to fill out forms, and we've done many of these. And we felt like it was finally a good time to show you the tricks and talk about the tricks and the techniques that we have used to make it happen, because it isn't easy. I'm going to quickly launch a poll for you to fill out just to get an idea of how many of you have actually used phone to fill out forms, or tablet for that matter. So if you could quickly fill out the poll, that would be great. And it looks like we've got quite a few people working on that. We'll take 10 seconds now and do this. And it looks like most of you, 73%, have not done this before. 8% of you have. Actually, now it's up to 75% have not. And then 17% of you would like to try soon. So that's great. So this is a timely topic, and let's get started. So what are we talking about here? Well, SharePoint forms work in the browser, so you can actually fill them out on your phones. And the problem is that they don't look good. In fact, I'll show you an example here in 1 or 2 slides of what it looks like. We're going to use our leave request form, which we've demoed before as an example. And the reason why they don't look good isn't because of any limitation in the form. It's because the form, well, I'll tell you in a minute, but that's the topic today. So how do these forms flop when you present them on the phone? Well, the phones typically have a higher DPI, or dots per inch or pixels per inch resolution, and because of that, the forms don't look the same. And I'll show you an example in a second. In addition, when you're tabbing around in your phone, it zooms into these fields, right? And that causes everything else to disappear, which means that your users can't figure out what they're filling out. They don't have a label. And I'll show you an example here in a second. Date pickers, the default date pickers in InfoPath don't look good on the phone. And I'm going to be showing you screenshots from my iPhone 4S today, an older phone, just to show you. A lot of people are still using iPhone 4s, 4Ss. It's hard to select days with the date picker, so we're not going to use the date picker. We're going to show you a different technique. In addition, buttons don't look great. They look better on Android than on iOS, but they look bad on iOS. So let's take a look at some of these problems. I'm going to show you some screenshots here. So before, this is the leave request form that we've demoed before. You can see here in the image that we've got white space on the left and the right margins. That show policy at the top is very small, hard to make out, even in this exploded view. There's white space in the form itself on the left and right side of the form. The buttons you can see here, it's got that weird background, and these are just normal buttons with text on them. They're not showing up correctly. In addition, there's some white space at the bottom, but it gets worse. When I tab around, you can see here that the label for my date when I want to take off is gone, and so I don't know what this field is. I see the date picker there, but that's hard to press. You can see that it cuts off things. They're not displayed correctly. It just zooms in to wherever. In addition, the date picker, like I mentioned a moment ago, it is hard to use, and actually when you click on the date picker, it actually scrolls everything out of view. And then you have to kind of use your finger to drag the window back to where the date picker is showing. So that doesn't work very well on the phone. And like I said, again, the labels are hidden, and this is probably one of the biggest issues, is that when people are filling out the form, they just don't know what the field is. And of course, you don't want them to have to type in fields. You want to use drop downs. Oops, going too fast here. So those are some of the issues that we've seen with the iOS and the Android. Any phone is going to be different, but these are the main issues that we've seen. So I'm going to show you how we fix these issues. And what you see on the left here is you see the form before I made the changes, and on the right you see the form after we made some simple changes. Now we could do more. We just spent about an hour yesterday taking this form and mobile enabling it. The form had not previously been mobile enabled. And I'm showing you screenshots because the emulator that has me typing on iOS, it was difficult to install last night, and I just decided to take screenshots. But what you can see here is that with very minor modifications, we were able to get the form to look much better in terms of the visibility and readability on the right here. I can read this now, whereas before I could not read it as easily. We've gotten rid of the white space on the margins and the bottom. You can see that down below we've replaced the date picker with drop downs. I'll show you how those work in a second. And you can see down at the very bottom of the screen that we've got now these submit and close buttons looking much better. In addition, with the date picker, you can see what we've done. Instead of using the date picker out-of-box version, we're using a drop-down. And we've just got 3 drop-downs, one for the month, one for the days, one for the year. This actually works really well in the mobile forms because people just use their finger to scroll up and down just like you would in a typical iOS app. So it's very easy to use. In addition, what we've done is we've moved the labels to be up above the fields so that even if they zoom in, they'll still see the label, in this case the comments label. For that time off, I'm going to meet the Premier of China, ha ha ha. Well, that was Mark Zuckerberg yesterday. But yeah, you can see that the comment now is there, so I can see exactly what I need to fill out. Some of you may be noticing the Japanese characters. I have my phone set to Japanese to foil any criminal behavior. Just kidding. It helps me with my studies here. But this is not Chinese. You may have thought that I was preparing the phone to show them show the app to the Premier of China, but no, this indeed is Japanese, not Chinese. And you can see here that with the drop down for the reason, that's going to make it a lot easier for people to select rather than using those radio buttons, which are very tiny. Now you could make the radio buttons bigger, but in general, I would say just change it into a drop down. It's easier. People are used to doing that. So those are some examples. Another example here is, and I'll talk more about this in a second, is when you're using email, you want to include the link. And I don't know if you were with us several weeks ago, but we showed the same application and talked about how these approve and reject links automatically approve and reject. You just click the link, it opens the form and approves it without the managers don't have to actually go to the form library. They can just click the link. And they don't have to click on a button in the form. They just click the button in the email. In this case, you can see that we've provided the managed leave request form in a larger font setting as well. So how do we do these things? That's the big question, right? So I just showed you, I'm going to show you in the designer now how we did it. And we did the following things. We changed the screen resolution. We increased the font size. The font size for the labels is 36. The font size for the text fields is 24. We made sure the labels were above the fields. Like I said earlier, we changed the date picker to make it a drop-down, 3 drop-downs, which is easy to do. Those of you who know what an XML template part is, a reusable component for your forms, highly recommend creating an XTP for that. We have not done that yet. We should do that. And that'll make it easy to reuse from form to form, just like a date picker is. Date picker control. You can have a date picker control for mobile that you create, and then you can reuse it in the designer using the XML template parts. And let's see, where are those XML template parts? So let's take a look at the before and after here. So here's the, I can switch to this. Here is the before form in the designer, and you can see that this just looks like what you would expect. This is our form that we gave some of you several weeks ago, and this is a fine looking form. It's not awesome, but it's fine. It gets the job done. Now let's take a look at what the new version looks like, and that would be this one. And you can see as I drag this over right away that the font is bigger, and specifically we're using 18-point font for the actual policy text. Down below, for the titles, we're using 36. For the text, we're using 24. I mentioned a moment ago that the XML template parts can be used. You can access them here on the ribbon underneath controls. You have to create them first, so we would create an XML template part for that date control. Those three drop downs there. I would recommend taking that section right there and creating an XML template part for that, and then reusing it over and over again. And to reuse it, once you've added it to the designer, you just go down here and you find it, and you can just select it, and it'll automatically add it to your form. So that's the leave request form in terms of the before and after, and you can see that the main change, I think there's three things to focus on, and that is the font size, the layout, having the labels above the fields, and for the date pickers using drop downs, and in general using drop downs for everything, as opposed to radio buttons or the out-of-box controls. And creating your own controls is great. The fourth thing that I need to mention is the buttons. So these buttons right here are not your standard buttons. They're picture buttons. And if we right-click on it, you'll see that it's a picture button. It looks like a standard one, but it's not. The standard buttons don't render so well on the mobile browser. I'm not sure why, but they do for Android, but not for iOS. So by replacing them with these standard picture buttons that look the same, you get the display to look better. Let's go back to the presentation here, and yeah, and so that's pretty much it. Short and sweet, right? So the workflow is a SharePoint workflow. We're actually adding links to the workflow. Let me show you the manage request form. It's very similar. The manage leave request form is just a very simple form. This is the older version, and you can see that it's just basically got one screen saying the form was either approved or rejected. That's what this calculated value here is. For the browser-enabled version, you can see that the font size is bigger and the button is bigger, and it's a picture button now. So very simple changes to make this thing more read-only, and this actually is an example of using a calculated value with two possible. I don't know if you can see this, but it's got a concatenation of it's one calculated value for the entire thing as opposed to text calculated value text. And this just assures that it's all lined up correctly, which is what you want. And you're seeing here in the middle, we have that approved or rejected is that request status. And what we're doing is we're just capitalizing it here by doing the translate on it. So we're taking that approved or rejected status, capitalizing it to make it stand out more, and then concatenating the rest of it. And that technique is great. It would be great if we could also bold it to say you have approved this request in bold or in green bold. And if we did a little bit more work, we could do that. But the calculated value won't let us bold or format just one part of it inside. So we'd have to create two calculated values for that. So that's a really simple example there of those two forms. Any questions from the audience? Hopefully this is all pretty simple. I'm going to be packaging up these samples and sending them to you if you answer those 5 questions from our survey. Very simple questions. Really appreciate you being here today. If you've got any questions whatsoever on InfoPath or mobile forms, we do have forms like this in production. We're working on forms for companies that have these techniques built into them. They work well. People click on a link, they open the form, and they can read it when it opens. They don't have to zoom in. When they tab around to fill things out, they can actually see the label. it's usable as opposed to the out-of-box forms, which are not. So hopefully that was interesting for folks. This has been a short webinar today. I don't have any questions out there. Maybe Shane, you can ask us a question just to make sure that I still have audio here. Shane, do you have any questions on what you saw there?
So would you normally use one standard form to do both like a browser view and a mobile view?
That's a great question. Let's take a look at what these look like in the browser now that we've published them. So on the HR site, we've done this on 365. So when I accessed these forms last night to get the screenshots, I was just accessing our 365 site, which you're familiar with, of course. And on here, if I go to site contents, I can just open up the new leave request form. And it's right here. It's actually the same library we used previously. We did publish the old one up there as original. And you can see here there's an artifact up on the upper right. We need to fix that. But this is the form filled out in the browser. This is the mobile form filled out in the browser. And I would say use the same form for both. And simply because that's a long vacation. September, and you can get these to automatically select today's date. We just didn't have time to do that last night. But yeah, I mean, you can do this. I would say basically use the same form for both. You cannot switch between views based on the browser. The agent string. You can't tell, for example, that they're. Unfortunately, if you're using QRoles, you can tell where they're coming from. But if you're not using QRoles, you can't tell they're coming from a mobile browser. And so you're best off using that lowest common denominator, which is what you see here, is the mobile version. That's a great question. Next question we have from Greg. Thanks, Shane. Next question we have from Greg. Thanks, Greg. What about long forms, multi-pages? So with long forms, what I recommend doing is a gradual display. So you're going to want to put everything in one view, or you could have separate views, but as they're filling out the form, you're gradually showing these sections with the other data. So keep your forms small, and we've talked about this in our training class as well. Don't blow the user away with this really long thing. Show them sections one after another as they're filling out the form, and you're hiding and showing these sections, and then you can use buttons, paging buttons on the bottom, big paging buttons, on the left and the right, to move between those sections or those views. I recommend using sections as opposed to views, because when you have a view switch in 365 or in SharePoint, the view switch takes 1 or 2 seconds, whereas the section hide show does not. The hide show is instantaneous. So we use hide show sections for everything. That's a great question. We should have brought that up in the presentation, actually. Donald, you got a question. Do you keep 2 versions, one for PC and one for browser? And that's exactly the same question Shane just asked. We don't. We just have one, and it's the one for the browser, and we just use that for the PC, as I just mentioned. What do you do or suggest? So I think that was Greg, your follow on to your first question. And then Stacy's got a question, where do we get Forms Quo? So Forms Quo is our new website. Thanks, Stacy, for asking that. Forms Quo is a new website we've set up to talk about migration paths for InfoPath. We have not updated the site in over a year. We're overdue on updating it. We are going to update it with version 1.1 of Forms Viewer, which is our technology for migrating forms. We still recommend using InfoPath for the time being. It is going to be shipped in 2016 as part of the browser. You're going to get a new version in SharePoint 2016 when you install SharePoint, and 365 will also be updated. And so therefore Microsoft will be supporting it in theory for 10 more years until 2025. The designer, the 2013 designer, is that what's going to be used, just like SharePoint Designer is not being shipped again. InfoPath Designer 2013 is the last version. They are making sure that compatibility works between 2013 Designer Filler and SharePoint 2016 Browser. It's just like 2010 Designer works with 2013. The 2013 Designer will work with 2016. So FormsQuo is a site that you can go to get information about migration strategies. But like I said, I mean, we've got our Forms Viewer app, which we've got customers using now. Really happy about that. There are also some other alternatives out here, but for the time being, if you're using InfoPath, that is the SharePoint Forms technology today. That's the current technology. No need to worry about these other things. If you want to get the sample I demoed, that'll be part of the webinar. I'm going to send those out in a package later today after I get your survey results. Hopefully that answered your question. And then let's see, Donald, do you have another question here? I guess you have a checkbox or something to switch to a mobile view. Yeah, that's actually a great idea. So for the question earlier where we said, do you have two versions, one for the PC, one for the browser? You could at the very top of the form have click here for mobile. You could assume the PC version, and you could have them click on a button at the top to switch to a view, and then you could just have a mobile view in the same one, and you can have a button at the top of the form, a very big button, to allow them to do that. Or you could assume mobile and have the button switch to the PC version. Whatever you want to do, that's a good technique, and we have done that in the past. But I would say for simplicity's sake, rather than have two views, which you have to now update whenever something changes, I would just have one view. It looks fine. The mobile version looks fine in the PC, but the PC version does not look fine in the mobile, and so I would just use the mobile version. But your mileage may vary. And Eric, let's see, Eric, you've got a question. Using Q rules, it can detect browser types correctly. If so, which rule is that? There's a get environment rule. I'm going to be actually talking about Q rules 7.2, which we are releasing today. I'm talking about Q rules at 9 a.m. Pacific in about 30 minutes. So for those of you who are interested, the second webinar that was scheduled for today is to talk about the Q rules 7.2 release. And more than happy to have you join us for that. We'll be taping that as well, and I will show the commands there. But yeah, if you are using Q rules today, what you want to do is just open up your Q rules command document, which you can see here. I've still got 7.1 on this machine, and then if you search for get environment, I believe, put me on the spot here, that it will tell you if it's a mobile browser or client. Okay, so that should help you there, and you could use that to switch automatically among the views. But like I said, for simplicity's sake, I would just use the mobile one for everything. I mean, the people who are older who can't read the small text will thank you. The Forms Viewer app is for 2013, not 2010, correct? Stacy, yes, right now we only support 2013, but we will be supporting non-SharePoint web sites. So if you have SharePoint 2013 or 365, you can install the Forms Viewer app today. We don't have plans to backport it to 2010, but we do have plans to port it to non-SharePoint sites. If we get enough input from you, enough people asking for it, we may spend the effort to make it 2010 compatible. The reason why 2010 is difficult is because 2010 doesn't have an app store. That was new in 2013 and is currently an app, so we would have to change the deployment model for that. I think that's it for the questions. Once again, I want to thank you for joining us today. I will get this recording up on YouTube, and thank you for your time. If you can fill out the survey, we'll send you the package. And once again, if you have any suggestions on future topics, please let us know. These webinars are for you, and I look forward to seeing you again next week, or for those of you who are interested in Q rules, in 30 minutes. Have a good day.